All right, so this is where I left off with my sketch, and I had just gotten to like the middle part. If you think of the frames as beginning, middle, and end, he gets struck by lightning, and then the expectation, I think, is that you think it's Zeus and he's going to be fine, right? He's the god of lightning or god of thunder, whatever he is. And then I'm going to subvert expectations a little bit because I needed him to turn into this kind of emoji of a skull. So I'm going to have him be kind of a charred silhouette. And then I'm going to start to have, so I'll call this char. And then I'm going to start to have that charcoal break away. So maybe I'll do a little crack in it here. And it's going to crumble and kind of fall away. And what I like about storyboards is you can use arrows to show the direction of things. So all this stuff is going to fall or crumble. So the ash crumbles away. This is why I like space in between the panels. And what does it reveal? It reveals my really goofy looking skull emoji with the Roman coin on the tongue. Okay, so now, as the last bits fall away. And so I end with this, right? So in that way, I have changed from something kind of like this, or maybe I'll create my own Zeus, to something like this. And now I have to think, how can I set it to reset? Not because it's a requirement, but because that just makes for a more satisfying looping animation if it doesn't jump cut from the end to the beginning. And I think for this one, it doesn't make sense to play it backwards, because then it would be kind of like sucking up ash, and then lightning would heal it. So instead, I think it's just going to be a crossfade, where on top of the skeleton, then the image of Zeus is going to slowly fade in and overtake it. So it's like, because he's immortal, the skin is going to grow back. Now, if I had a lot of time, I could build it muscle by muscle, and I could make that a really cool transformation too. But no, for this, I'm just going to fade one in on top of the other. Right. Okay, but this is my main story in 9 panels. I'm just going to have a blank background, but even though it's a blank background, it doesn't mean there's not a setting, because setting can be implied. So because there's lightning, it seems like Zeus is outside. And so the electrocution, all of it makes sense. I don't need to actually put it up in the clouds, or I don't need to put it in a public park somewhere. I don't need to waste a lot of time building a set. I'm mostly going to focus on characters and then those setting elements like the lightning. Tracy, question?
When collecting assets,
yes.
you need a picture of something. Does it have to have that large pixel setting like we had before, or can it be of a smaller set of pixels?
It's still good if it's around 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, but it doesn't need to be as large. So don't use small, but medium can work. And that's because we're going to be working within a square that's 800 by 800 pixels. It's always better to have a higher resolution, but we don't have the same limitations here because it's going to be for screen, not for printing. Good question. So I'm going to call this my Spring 25 Karl Assignment 3. And I'm going to call this Barbecue Zeus. This is my sketch, right? And the sketch is the first thing we're going to turn in. I'm going to save it just to the desktop and then organize it to the right place. So in order to put it to Canvas, I need to save it as a copy out of Photoshop and put it as a JPEG. And if Photopea is working on your browser, on your device, you can do all this that way. Or you can just take a photograph of your sketch, right? Just like we've done in past assignments. All right. So I'm going to, first thing now, I'm going to put that into Canvas. So once you are finished with your sketch and you are happy with the transformation that it shows, create a post in assignment 3, put your name, and then put the first requirement. And that shows me that you are working on it so that you will not get a 0 on this assignment, even if nothing else gets posted before the deadline. As long as you acknowledge it and you show you're working on it.
Do you have to draw it out the way you did using Photoshop?
No, you can draw it by hand. Yeah, I do it digitally just so that it can all be in the video and you can see my thinking through it. Requirement number 1, rough storyboard sketch featuring a transformation with an asset that you have already created. And you can add anything else that you want. All right, good. So now we're off to the races. Now, what I would do if you have it in your sketchbook is just keep that sketchbook open so you can always refer to it. Because I did it digitally, I'm just going to keep it open in preview off in the corner here so I can always refer to it. And I have my assets. So what's the next step? The next step is creating your assets, your characters, your props, your settings, all the things that are part of your storytelling. So what I need a Zeus. I need lightning bolts. I need char, like a char texture. And then the other things I have created. So let's start with the thing that I've created. I'm going to open it with Photopea or Photoshop. And I am going to do what's called interrogating the asset. I need to figure out what size it is. So how do I do that? I go to image size. And mine is 10 inches by 9 inches by 300. Plenty big enough. Because this project, you will see from where I give you the examples of things you turn in, this is going to be 8 inches by 8 inches at 100 pixels per inch. Because this is for a high-def screen. Minimum screen resolution is 72. 100 or 120 is kind of standard for higher def resolutions. 8 by 8 inches is not huge, but it's good for like posting online or for social media. And why do we make it that small if we have the option to make it bigger? And that's because we want this animation to load quickly and to play easily on canvas and online. And for that, you don't want to have just a ton of pixels that then have to get shrunken down. So 8 by 8 at 100 pixels per inch. So when I look at my character here, what I can do is build a canvas size around it that is maybe like 14 inches by 14 inches. It's going to be different for all of you. But just kind of see how that spaces on a square. And I like that. Maybe I move it a little bit to one side. So this is just the PNG, right? Good. So that already is basically what my end frame is. So what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to change this. Remember, I opened it up from my assignment 3 folder, but I haven't renamed it yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say image size, and I'm going to put it into the right resolution. Because working at it way too big will only slow it down, especially if we're using freeware, right? So I'm going to change this to 8 by 8 inches by 100 pixels per inch. And the reason it's not changing is because I didn't check resample, right? So let's say you're taking your landscape, but your landscape wasn't a square, and you want to force it to be a square. So click on resample, and then click on the chain link there, and then just type in 8 by 8 inches on a duplicate of it, right, at 100 pixels per inch, and it will show it to you at that resolution. And when you view it full size, like view 100%, it will look like this on your screen. Not quite as big as your whole screen. But that's the resolution we're making this animation at. Now I'm going to rename it. So save as. This is Karl assignment 3. And I'm calling it my assets. So I only have one asset in here so far. I just have one character head. I need that other character head, so let me bring it in. And I'm going to grow it. And because the one I got from Pixabay is like at least 1,000 pixels, right? And this square, 8 by 8 by 100, is, or 8 by 8, yeah, at 100 pixels per inch. That gives me 800 by 800 pixels. So I'm going to keep growing this, really zoom in on it. Here we go. To get that Zeus head, and shrink it just a little bit. And it should still be fairly clean, right? Doesn't need to be as clean as my vector shapes for my emoji, but fairly clean. I hit return. Now I only need that head. I don't want the rest of it. So I'm going to lasso around it. And this is how I start creating my assets, using those compositing skills from our first assignments. And I'm going to do a rough cut around it. And then I'm going to duplicate, Command J, and then I'm going to get rid of the smart object, right? And now I'm going to clean this asset up. There's a few ways I can do it. I can hit Command T because we're in Photoshop, Option Command T if you're in Photo P, and I can warp it because I need it to cover up the little teardrop, right? I'm going to widen the face there. I don't like the eyes. I think I'm going to replace those, but it might be nice to have those squinty eyes as an option. And I'm going to clean up the edges here. And I have a 1 pixel feather. And I'm just going to trim out these edges. GIF animations are goofy. They can combine different types of imagery, like flat illustrated outlined cartoons with photographic reality, bright colors with muted naturalistic color. So just have fun with it. Yeah, cleaning them up. And this is called cleaning your assets. We all want clean assets. This is a lot of advertising with bears that has that theme. All right. Let me pause there because I see some hands up. All right, so I'm building my assets. I'm building everything at 8 inches by 8 inches by 100 pixels per inch. And I'm also thinking of all the things I want in my story. So I need to build those assets. So this Zeus isn't inspiring enough to me yet. So how can I change that? Well, what I can do, and to make a connection between the skull and the Zeus, is I can actually use eyes from what I've already built. So I can do internal compositing, right? And I'll just duplicate that eye, then put that on top of the Zeus, and then shrink it down, maybe play with it a little bit, make it a little bit more oval, because I want the Zeus to look a little goofier, right? Okay, now, maybe to kind of fit the aesthetic, I'm going to double click and put a stroke around it. I'll make that stroke black to match. Make it a little bit thinner, right? And then inside the eye, I want to have a pupil. These are no longer vector shapes, these are rasterized. So I'm going to select all that red